Remember last year, you had lots of drama last year going on where everybody was focusing on Angel Reese as well as Caitlin Clark. And white America was just enthralled. Ratings were through the roof. Folks were cheering on Caitlin Clark as she broke the NCAA record for most points, Division I record for most points ever scored in a career. Well, former NBA player Etan Thomas, he wrote a piece and he said, hey, what's going on? You got some amazing players this year. Paige Bueckers, you, of course, before she injured her knee, tore ACL. You had Juju at USC. All this was happening, and Etan said, why isn't white America just rallying around Paige like they did Caitlin last year? Race is always at the forefront. Etan joins us right now. Etan, glad to have you back on the show. So you say that the difference is Paige Bueckers doesn't have a black villain this year.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of rung a nerve with a lot of white people. You know, I mean, it was really clear that they made Angel Reese the villain after she beat Caitlin Clark, who was really kind of held up as, you know, the great white hope. She's a fantastic player. But then the media kind of went into this narrative of the villain. And that's what happened. I mean, it's not something that I made up. You know, you're looking at it where the viral image of Angel Reese doing the waving her hand in front of her face that went everywhere. And the outrage was just off the charts. And so then, you know, following the next years, Angel Reese was always the villain in anything that she did. And Caitlin Clark was praised. That's just what happened. So when I posed the question of why, you know, Paige wasn't really given the fawning over that Caitlin Clark was, I went through a few scenarios. You know, Paige has been outspoken. She used her ESPYs award to really credit Black women. You know, she doesn't have an Angel Reese factor. You know, and the fact of the matter is that a lot of the fans, not all of them, you know, but a certain demographic of fans were there for the wrong reasons. They came over to really celebrate Caitlin Clark's whiteness, not so much her talent. And it was definitely apparent. I mean, you heard all year WNBA players were saying that they were getting attacked and, you know, racially attacked and you know, at the arena, you know, online, everything like that. That aspect wasn't there with Paige. Now, she's a wonderful player. She's probably going to be the #1 pick. But I wanted to know, why isn't that demographic, you know, rallying around Paige? And I gave a few scenarios why, and that didn't make a lot of people very happy.
And of course, that transferred to the WNBA, where record numbers were turning out, and what you had was a Caitlin Clark playing at Iowa, flyover state, Midwest, all those things. And many of these white conservatives were pouring their views into her, thinking she was, quote, one of them, thinking that she was MAGA. Well, when she, as you said, when not only with the ESPYs, but also when she got named, you know, a Person of the Year with Time Magazine, and she talked about the impact of Black ball players. No, they're not hating me. We're not fighting, all those sort of different things. You literally had these white folks who turned on her, and she was like, yo, it's all about basketball. And so here you got Paige coming from Connecticut, but also she's got Black folks in her life. And so your whole deal was, hey, these things are there. People got mad. Fox News quickly picked it up, and that's when a lot of the hate started coming your way.
Oh, goodness. You know, once Fox News picks it up, and it was interesting because it was like, you know, I saw one thing that said that I wrote a racist article. I'm like, wait a minute. How can it be racist to say, why aren't you cheering this white girl as much as you cheer this other white girl? Like, I don't know if people know what racist means. You know, they don't use that term correctly. But no, I mean, Paige is a phenomenal player. I think that she should get a whole lot more recognition. But a lot of the people that were there, that demographic was there for the wrong reasons. Another telltale of that was Caitlin Clark repeatedly had to ask for her not to be weaponized. And she spoke out against racism and spoke out against bigotry because it was so prevalent. It was happening all over. And every time she did, you saw that, oh, she's giving in to the woke mob and doing all that different things. There's a certain demographic that uses that language.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, that's not all Caitlin Clark's fans. I'm not saying that at all. But that demographic was sure there. And they boosted ratings, and they were there for the wrong reasons. And they were weaponizing her no matter how many times she asked them not to.
It is quite interesting when you touch that nerve, and they don't want to admit it, but we saw what was taking place, and those of us knew. And you know what? There were a lot of people who, I think she's getting too much attention. I disagreed. Bottom line is, when you break the all-time record, you're going to get that level of attention. I had no problem with her coming in, and all of a sudden, the new TV contract rating is going up. To me, I said it was the same thing when Tiger Woods came into golf. And what I was saying to some players who were complaining, I literally was like, I need y'all to shut the hell up. It's a whole bunch of folk who did real well, when Tiger came in. So I didn't see that as a big deal. But the reality is, race was present.
But it's a little bit different with Tiger Woods. So when Tiger Woods came in and broke the barrier, so yes, we all got excited to see somebody that looks like us, dominating the sport where you typically don't see that. That's fine. You know what I mean? When Naomi Osaka came in, yes, the same thing. That is fine. The problem is with Caitlin Clark, then you began to bash Angel Reese. Then there was like this hatred towards the other players, the black players. Then there was like, oh, well, they don't mean, there's this disrespect, this constant, like if Caitlin Clark invented basketball. And it was like, well, wait a minute now. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be disrespectful to the other players. And it's not something I saw a lot of media people, kind of reducing it to saying mean tweets or, something like that. But no, they would have reacted differently if it was their daughters or wives or something like that who were on the other side of, racist attacks. And that's the way the WNBA players describe them. Not just simply mean tweets or fans saying boo or something like that. Literally racist attacks. So that's the difference. It's fine to cheer for somebody that looks like you, but when you demonize someone else and then all the other players, then that's when it's different.
Questions from my panel. Tyler, you're first.
So great to meet you. I think, it's clear that race plays a role in how athletes are perceived. Do you believe the story romanticized because that Caitlin was from Iowa and they're trying to say because UConn is such this, this team to be to compete with, that it made it a little more difficult for the other story to be told?
Personally, I think so when Caitlin Clark spoke out and spoke out against racism, you saw a lot of them get upset with her. When she liked the tweet, you remember when she liked the tweet from Taylor Swift, and the tweet was something with...
It was regarding Vice President Kamala Harris.
Right. And you saw how upset they got.
Ooh, they were pissed.
That tells me that it wasn't about, where she was from. They were trying to weaponize her and make her something that they wanted to make her as a symbol. So, I've heard a lot of people say that, well, it's the location or, how many points she scored. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But if that was the case, then you wouldn't have been upset of her liking a tweet. You wouldn't be upset of her denouncing racism.
Indeed. Cameron.
So glad to be on with you, Etan. UConn women's basketball is home to arguably probably, if not the greatest, 2 or 3 or 4 of the greatest WNBA and basketball players with Maya Moore, Diana Taurasi, and Sue Bird that all come out of that lineage. So UConn has had such a spotlight on them. But coming out of last year with the Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, do you feel that, I know with Juju going down with that unforeseen and tragic injury and so forth, was that something that you felt was being set up again because they saw that play work before, kind of the white, black, the couple different parts of the country, and maybe there is no foil for Paige to be pitted against in kind of the national media?
Oh, 100%. I think that the way that Angel Reese was demonized, she talked about having death threats. You know what I mean? That is not just mean tweets or people booing her. She talked about literally having death threats. She said it happened all the time. after she was demonized. She was demonized so much and it was interesting when the waving the hand in front of the face. Caitlin Clark had done the same thing the game before that. And they all thought it was cute. She was on like a little commercial, waving her hand in her face, and everything was fine. But then when Angel Reese beat her and she did it, then she was demonized. She was unprofessional. She was all these different things. Ghetto. She was, all these things happened, and they drew the line in the sand, like in bright red MAGA ink. And it wasn't, it's not a stretch to be able to see what happened. So then from that point on, one was demonized and one was put on this pedestal. And it's not any fault of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark didn't do anything she actually spoke against this all the time. It's that demographic of fans that wanted to use her that way were the issue.
Michael.
Hey, Etan. So in reading your article and remembering back to when Angel Reese, the 2 years where she was battling against Caitlin Clark, do you think here it's possibly also a lack of a rivalry, a lack of a rival in general that will draw the attention of spectators, especially those who may not normally watch college women's basketball? The reason why I say that is because I remember when LSU won one year, defeated Iowa, and then you had the rematch, right? For a lot of us, even though I do understand the racists out there, and I think race was part of that, but for a lot of us, it was just like a rivalry. It kind of reminded us of Magic and Bird, and I'm from Michigan. Okay, it reminded us of Magic and Bird as well. So do you think? Hold on, Roland. Let me finish. So do you think in this situation with Paige Bueckers, part of it? I do understand racism is there's an element of that, but do you think that part of it is lack of a rival that draws the attention of spectators?
Okay, hold up. First of all, Michael, do you watch women's basketball?
No.
So you watch women's basketball?
WNBA, I watched a little bit.
Okay, all right.
No.
So did you watch Iowa play LSU? Did you watch Iowa play LSU?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because of the rivalry.
Okay.
It wasn't for me. It wasn't a black-white thing.
No.
It was a rivalry.
Okay. So for you, it was a rivalry.
It was a rivalry, and it got a lot of attention.
Here's the here's the reality.
It caused me to tune in.
Here's the reality. We can talk about the Magic Bird rivalry. That was race. Were there people who watched that because they wanted to see two hoopers? Absolutely. But the reality. First of all, Boston damn near whole starting five was black. Okay, but the reality is that was positioned as Larry Magic. That was them in the finals of the NCAA, and then you go into the NBA. And the reality is that was a racial dynamic to it. Anybody who follows boxing, one of the most highest, I think it's still the highest, the highest bets placed on a fight was what? What was it? Anybody know?
Which one? Well, it's been a few of them.
No,
talking about back in the Ali days.
It's only one we talking about. A white dude and a black dude.
Floyd and Connor.
No. It's a white dude and a black dude.
Going back to Jack Johnson?
No. George Cooney. Now it was Cooney.
Jerry Cooney.
Jerry Cooney and Larry Holmes.
Right. Jerry Cooney, Larry Holmes.
That was a white.
I remember that fight.
That was a white-black dynamic.
The Great White Hope.
So the point Etan's talking about is, and again, when boxer Tommy Morrison came on, they were hoping he was going to be the Great White Hope. Well, so what Etan is laying out is the white-black dynamic. White guy champion, the black guy villain, however they play it, that dynamic has always played. And even if they don't characterize, to your point, Magic Larry, Magic wasn't the, quote, villain. In Boston he was. In L.A. Larry was. That white dynamic was there. I'm from Houston, and Etan, the documentary shows it. If you were black in America, 9.9 out of 10, you were cheering for Magic. And if you were white, 9.9, you were cheering for Larry. And if you were black in Boston, you were cheering for Magic.
Right. Like I said, I do realize there is a racial component to this. But for some spectators,
No. But Etan is actually making your argument. What Etan is saying is that Angel Reese was made out to be the villain. She's black. You had,
I understand that.
You had Caitlin Clark. What's the difference this year? He's literally saying you don't have the racial dynamic because you don't have the villain. The villain was not created, and unfortunately, the villain is always in these dynamics. It's going to be a black-white thing. That's what. So, and what you're laying out, Etan, is that the role that media plays because the racial dynamic in media drives this too.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I was posing another question, though. But go ahead, Etan. Go ahead. I may do a follow-up.
No, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I wasn't saying that everybody fell into that category. But
right.
There was that strong demographic that was there for that reason. And that reason only. Because they weren't fans of women's college basketball. They weren't fans of the
at all.
They didn't know anything about anything else. All they knew was Caitlin Clark and her whiteness. That's it. And that's what they were there to celebrate. And they didn't care about any other players, any other teams, of the history of anybody's even records. And it was interesting as you saw the dynamic play out during the season. And it was really frustrating to see even some black media people kind of buy into this, where they use weaponized language. I think it was Carrington who fouled Caitlin Clark one time, and they said it's like she poked her in the eye or something like that.
Right.
And I saw, and they were saying she stabbed her in the eye.
She was mugged.
I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Stabbed her? Why that language? And they're using it for a specific reason. They were holding Caitlin Clark up as the delicate white flower that all the other mean black players were trying to hurt and to harm, and they had something against her, and we have to protect this delicate white flower. That's the way the media created it. Now, no, Caitlin Clark didn't say that. She didn't. Right. She did a good job of saying, no, it was just a foul. It was nothing like that. But she had to constantly fight against that because that is the dynamic, the racial dynamic that the WNBA was playing on, because they knew why a lot of the people were there. The new fans, because that helped their revenue, that helped the views, that helped everything else. So it benefited them. So the WNBA kind of allowed all that to happen. They didn't really, squash it the way that they could have. And the way that you hear the descriptions of the crowd and the fans actually in Indiana, in the arena, it was horrible.
And
they could have squashed that with the security and everything like that. They allowed it to happen.
And Etan, the other reason why it's so hilarious is that you had white WNBA stars. But here's the other element nobody wants to deal with. The other thing is they also didn't like the white WNBA players because they were lesbian. Even though you had some of the white women who was the white woman with the Aces, who was married to the NFL player with the Giants, it was like, yeah, whatever. So really what you had here, and this is also the dynamic because when she goes from college to the pros, why you had that. But what you had is, and we just have to, look, it's a reality, okay? For years, what was the whole thing about Johnny Carson? Johnny Carson, he appeals to Omaha. He appeals to the Midwest. Everything was the Midwest. People don't even understand how that whole thing played on the psyche. Even today, they go, the flyover states. I'm appealing to the Midwest because this country holds the Midwest up as the pantheon of what it means to be an American. People watching may not even realize that in the radio business, in the television business, they literally taught people, white and black and others, you need to have a Midwest voice. A Midwest voice was devoid of an accent. So you couldn't sound like you were from New York or from Boston or from Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina or Texas or California. No, the optimum voice was the Midwest sound. And I remember when I worked in Dallas, Jack Hines, yes, I call his name, was the news director at KRLD Radio. We're in Dallas, and he calls me to his office, and he says that I need to work on my voice because I have an accent. He says I sound Texan. I'm looking at him like, the fuck you talking about? We in Dallas. And we had a dude who did, his name was Harvey Shepard. He did the Bond report. I'm like, his ass need a voice coach. And Jack Hines' whole thing was learn the Midwest voice sound. So what do we do in this country? It's the Midwest, the Midwest. So what you're saying here is that Caitlin Clark was so embraced by conservative white America because here she is, white woman, dominating in this sport where black women dominate. #1 scorer. She's from Iowa, the cornfields. She's a heterosexual. More than likely, she's one of us. She's MAGA, wearing a Make America Great Again hat. We're going to rally behind her. And your point, as she would say, they would say something, she ain't one of us. She ain't one of us. Lord, if she had come out as lesbian, they would have they would have lost their mind, Etan. They were attacking WNBA players who stood up for Black Lives Matter, who stood against, they were attacking the black ball players in college who took knees as well. And they said the great white hope has arrived. And that's where they were holding up as this epitome of greatness. Oh my God, she's the greatest ever. And no, we never heard of Cheryl Miller.
Right. or Shamika Holsclaw, or, a whole list of others. Or
Candace Parker, or Maya Moore, or Lynette Woodard, and we could go on and on. It was like, whatever, we don't care. It's all Caitlin.
Right, all Caitlin. And so Paige, in her, when they're looking at her, especially after she gave that SV speech, but before that, she was, if you go back to her freshman year and the stats that she put up, I mean, she won the Player of the Year. You know what I mean?
Right.
She was really dominating.
But she wasn't from the cornfields of Iowa.
Definitely wasn't. But after that speech, a lot of them backed off of her.
There you go.
You didn't hear them cheering for her as loud. They wasn't praising her and everything like that. So then people say, okay, well, she got injured. Okay, she did get injured, but then she came back. So a comeback story from an injury, if they wanted to praise her, they would. She's going to be the #1 pick in the NBA and the WNBA draft this year, probably. If they go on to win the championship, which there's a strong chance that they can, right? And you're going to tell me that she's not worthy of being cheered and praised and all of that thing because of the way that she's dominating, the way she's playing. So then I said, okay, so let's look at some other reasons why. I saw that she was actually, what was she doing? She was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to cook breakfast for her Muslim teammates during Ramadan. That's not something that they're going to wrap their arms around. You know what I mean? I mean, it's interesting when you see her personality and how outspoken that she is, not just at the ESPYs, all the time. It doesn't seem like she's one of them. Yep. So that's the part where I said, okay, this looks like this is a reason why it's different, and a lot of white people didn't like hearing that.
Listen, the reality of whiteness in America is truly astounding. It really is. Etan, glad to have you on the show, Doc. And I'm sure your email box and social media DMs continues to be filled with white hate.
I'm sure. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.